The awakening signal. The silence of deep space was broken by the soft hum of machinery aboard research station Kepler-7, floating serenely in the heart of the Helix Nebula. Dr. Zentar's forearms moved with practiced precision across the quantum analysis console, his compound eyes reflecting the blue glow of the displays. As one of the galaxy's foremost xenoarchaeologists, the tall, mantis-like Velthari had dedicated his life to studying the remnants of ancient civilizations scattered across the stars. It was during the third shift of what had been an otherwise routine day that the impossible happened. Dr. Zentar. The voice belonged to his assistant Krelos, whose excitement caused his chitinous carapace to shimmer with bioluminescent patterns. "You need to see this immediately." Zentar's primary eyes focused on the data stream while his secondary eyes monitored the surrounding displays. What he saw made his blood run cold. A signal, ancient, powerful, and definitely artificial, was broadcasting from the Terminus sector, a region of space that had been declared off-limits for 3 centuries. "Run a full spectral analysis," Zentar commanded, his voice betraying none of the unease creeping through his thorax. "Cross-reference the encryption with the historical database." The results appeared within moments, and Zentar felt his world shift. The encryption signature was human. Not just any human technology, but something from the dark period before the current Galactic Federation, from the time of the Human Void War. The signal was broadcasting on frequencies that hadn't been used, since humanity had nearly been wiped from existence. The message itself was simple, transmitted in 17 different galactic languages. "Protocol active, coordinates follow, stand clear." Zentar's hands trembled as he initiated an emergency transmission to the Federation Council. He had studied the Human Void War extensively, had written papers on the mysterious conclusion of that conflict. Every scholar knew the stories, though most dismissed them as myth and propaganda. Humanity, faced with total extinction at the hands of the Devourers, an extra-dimensional parasite species that consumed entire civilizations, had supposedly created something so terrible that even they had feared it. The nightfall. Within hours, the signal had been detected by monitoring stations across 3 sectors. By the end of the Galactic Standard Day, emergency sessions were being called on every major world. The Galactic Federation Council, representing 73 species across the known galaxy, had not seen such panic since the Krillian Plague nearly 2 millennia ago. In the great crystal chamber of New Andromeda, representatives from across the galaxy gathered in person and via hologram. The air thrummed with tension as species after species demanded answers that no one could provide. At the center of it all sat the human delegation, 3 individuals representing the billions of their kind scattered across dozens of worlds. Ambassador Elena Vasquez, her silver hair gleaming under the chamber's lights, stood to address the assembly. Her voice carried clearly through the translation matrices, each word measured and calm despite the chaos surrounding her. "Honored delegates," she began, "humanity is as surprised by this development as you are. We have no knowledge of any active protocols in the Terminus sector. That region has been quarantined since the end of the Void War, by our own choice as much as by Federation mandate." A cacophony of voices erupted from the assembly. The Zephyrian trade minister's tentacles writhed with agitation as he spoke. "You expect us to believe that humanity, the species that created weapons capable of cracking moons, has simply lost track of their most dangerous creation?" General Cathara of the Draconian Empire, her reptilian features set in a permanent scowl, slammed her clawed fist against her podium. The nightfall was humanity's answer to extinction. Stories speak of a ship that could fight entire fleets alone, that wielded power beyond conventional understanding. If such a vessel has truly awakened... She didn't need to finish the thought. Every being in the chamber who had lived through the aftermath of the Human Void War understood the implications. The nightfall hadn't just ended that conflict. It had ended it so completely and brutally that the Devourers had been driven back into whatever dimensional void they had emerged from, never to be seen again. But the cost had been terrible. Entire star systems had been left uninhabitable. The boundaries between normal space and the quantum realm had been permanently scarred, and humanity itself had been so horrified by what they had unleashed that they had voluntarily dismantled their war machine and submitted to Federation oversight of their military capabilities. The debate raged for hours. Some delegates called for immediate evacuation of all nearby systems. Others demanded that humanity reveal the true capabilities of their ancient weapon. A few even suggested a preemptive strike against whatever was broadcasting from the Terminus sector. It was Chancellor Mordith of the Ethereal Conclave who finally brought order to the chaos. The ancient being's form shimmered with barely contained energy as his voice resonated through both sound and telepathic channels. "Fear will not serve us here," he intoned. "If the legends of the Nightfall are true, then whatever has awakened. It believes there is a threat worthy of its attention. We cannot ignore the possibility that this signal represents not an act of aggression, but a warning." The chamber fell silent as his words sank in. If something had triggered humanity's ultimate weapon after 3 centuries of dormancy, what could it possibly be defending against? The decision, when it came, was reached by the narrowest of margins. A joint investigation fleet would be assembled, with representatives from major Federation powers and volunteer crews from a dozen species. They would approach the Terminus sector cautiously, attempt communication, and report back their findings. As the session ended and delegates began filing out to prepare for what might be their final voyage, Ambassador Vasquez remained behind, staring at the star charts displayed on the chamber's great screen. The Terminus sector glowed like a malevolent eye at the edge of known space, and somewhere within its boundaries, something that should have remained buried forever was stirring. 3 days later, the investigation fleet assembled at the edge of Federation space. 12 ships representing 8 different species, their crews filled with volunteers who understood they might not return. At their head flew the Federation vessel Harmony, its captain a grizzled Cantorian named Vexahal who had served in 3 different conflicts and never lost a ship. The journey to the Terminus sector took 4 standard days through hyperspace, during which the fleet's xenobiologists, historians, and tactical experts worked around the clock trying to prepare for every possible scenario. But as they emerged from the swirling chaos of the hyperspace tunnel and found themselves at the edge of the forbidden zone, every preparation seemed inadequate. The Terminus sector was a graveyard of stars ancient supernovas had left behind, a twisted maze of neutron stars, black holes, and cosmic debris that made navigation treacherous under the best of circumstances. Long-range sensors picked up the signal's source almost immediately. A massive gravitational anomaly surrounded by the remnants of what had once been a solar system. "My God," whispered Dr. Sarah Chen, the fleet's human xenoarchaeologist, as the tactical display resolved into clarity. "It's real." Emerging from behind the corpse of a dead star, like some primordial beast awakening from its slumber, came the Nightfall. Even at extreme range, its silhouette was unmistakable, a kilometer-long wedge of black metal and exotic materials that seemed to bend light around its edges. Ancient battle damage was visible across its hull, great gouges and scorch marks that spoke of conflicts beyond imagination, yet somehow the vessel remained intact and clearly operational. Energy readings spiked across the fleet's sensors as the ancient ship powered up systems that defied current understanding of physics. Weapon signatures appeared and disappeared like ghosts, while the ship's propulsion system generated gravitational distortions that sent ripples through local space-time. Captain Vexhal opened communications on all frequencies, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what they faced. "Unknown vessel, this is Captain Vexahal of the Federation ship Harmony. We come in peace seeking dialogue. Please respond." The silence stretched for long minutes, broken only by the electronic whispers of sensor arrays and life support systems. Then, cutting through the void like a blade, came a response that chilled every being in the fleet to their core. It wasn't words. It wasn't even a traditional signal. It was pure information, transmitted directly into their ship's computers and somehow into their minds simultaneously. Images, sensations, and knowledge that bypassed language entirely. The message was simple and terrifying. They return. Prepare. And, in that moment, as the nightfall hung motionless against the star-scattered darkness, every sensor in the fleet began detecting something impossible at the very edge of their range. Movement in the void between galaxies. Shapes that swallowed. Light and twisted space around them, heading directly toward the Milky Way. The Devourers were coming home. The truth unveiled. The emergency meeting aboard the Harmony was unlike anything in Federation history. Representatives from 8 different species crowded into the conference room, their various forms of distress clearly visible despite the vast differences in their biology. Captain Vexhal's scaled hide had taken on a pale, sickly hue, while Dr. Chen's hands trembled as she manipulated the holographic displays showing long-range sensor data. The gravitational distortions are consistent with Devourer technology, reported Commander Zethal, the fleet's crystalline tactical analyst. Her geometric form pulsed with anxious energy as she highlighted sections of the sensor sweep. But the signatures are evolved, stronger than anything in our historical records. Dr. Chen nodded grimly. If these readings are accurate, they're not just returning. They've spent the last 3 centuries adapting, growing, preparing for this moment. The implications were staggering. The Devourers weren't just cosmic parasites. They were a form of extra-dimensional consciousness that consumed entire civilizations, absorbing their knowledge, technology, and life force. When they had first appeared 300 years ago, they had swept through the Outer Rim territories like a plague, leaving behind nothing but dead worlds and twisted space. Humanity had been their primary target, perhaps because human consciousness had proven particularly nutritious. By the time the other species had realized the scope of the threat, Earth's colonies were falling one by one, and the home system itself was under siege. "We need to board the Nightfall," Dr. Chen announced, breaking the tense silence. If Captain Vasquez was telling the truth and modern humanity doesn't know what awakened their weapon, then the answers are on that ship. Several delegates objected immediately. The Andromedian representative's tentacles writhed in distress as he spoke. That vessel could disintegrate our entire fleet without effort. Approaching it could be suicide. But Captain Vexhal was already studying the tactical displays, his experienced eye noting details others had missed. Look at the damage patterns on its hull. Those aren't just battle scars, some of them are recent. Whatever awakened the Nightfall, it's been fighting something. The boarding party consisted of volunteers from 4 different species, led by Dr. Chen and Commander Zithal. They approached the ancient human vessel in a small shuttle, their hearts pounding as they drew near the hull. Up close, the Nightfall was even more intimidating. Its black surface seemed to absorb light completely, and strange energy patterns danced across its armor plating like living creatures. To their surprise, a docking bay opened as they approached, as if the ship had been expecting them. The bay's atmosphere read as standard Federation normal, though the air carried a metallic tang that spoke of centuries in space. The interior of the Nightfall was a maze of corridors that defied conventional ship design. Walls curved at impossible angles and the deck plating hummed with barely contained energy. Emergency lighting cast everything in a red glow that made shadows dance like living things. The technology here is at least 2 centuries ahead of current Federation standards, Commander Zethal observed, her crystalline sensors analyzing the bulkheads. But it's not just advanced, it's integrated with something else, something that doesn't belong in normal space. They found the crew in the ship's medical bay, sealed in emergency stasis pods that had somehow kept them alive for 3 centuries. Dr. Chen's scanner showed 37 humans in perfect preservation. Their life signs stable but deeply unconscious. At the center of the bay, in a pod marked with command insignia, lay a woman whose uniform bore the name Chen as a captain. "Captain Sarah Chen," Dr. Chen whispered, reading her own ancestor's nameplate. She's my great-great-grandmother." The stasis systems responded to their presence, beginning the lengthy revival process. While they waited, the boarding party explored more of the ship, discovering weapon systems that bent the laws of physics and defensive arrays that seemed to exist partially outside normal spacetime. The ship's central computer, when they finally accessed it, told a story that chilled them to the core. The Nightfall hadn't disappeared after the Human Void War. It had been lost in a dimensional fold while pursuing the retreating Devourers. The ship and crew had spent 3 centuries trapped between dimensions, fighting a running battle against Devourer scouts while slowly making their way back to normal space. The ship's AI had kept the crew in stasis to preserve their lives during the long journey home. When Captain Sarah Chen finally awakened, her first words were, "Status report. How long have we been out?" The conversation that followed was one of the most difficult in galactic history. Dr. Chen, the descendant, had to explain to her ancestor that 3 centuries had passed, that humanity had voluntarily dismantled its war machine, and that the galaxy had enjoyed relative peace during their absence. Captain Chen's response was immediate and chilling. "Then you're not prepared. They're coming back, and this time they've learned from their defeat." The ancient captain insisted on being brought before the Federation Council immediately. Within hours, a quantum communication link was established between the Nightfall and New Andromeda, allowing Captain Chen to address the assembled delegates via hologram. "Honored representatives," she began, her image flickering slightly due to the dimensional distortions around her ship. "I am Captain Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Force vessel Nightfall. I bring warning of an imminent threat to all life in this galaxy." The chamber erupted in questions and accusations, but Captain Chen continued speaking, her voice cutting through the chaos with military authority. "The Devourers were not destroyed 3 centuries ago. They were driven back to the spaces between dimensions. They have spent the intervening time studying us, learning our weaknesses, adapting their technology to counter our defenses. The force now approaching this galaxy is 50 times larger than the one we barely defeated before." She paused, allowing the implications to sink in before continuing. "The Nightfall's sensors have been tracking their approach for the past standard year. They will reach the Outer Rim territories within 6 months. When they arrive, they will not make the same mistakes they made before. They will not underestimate us again." General Cathara was the first to find her voice. "If what you say is true, then we need every advantage we can get. What are the Nightfall's capabilities? What weapons do you possess that could stand against such a force?" Captain Chen's smile was grim. "The Nightfall was built using technology that your Federation has banned. Quantum weapons that can tear holes in space-time, dimensional shields that exist partially outside reality, and propulsion systems that draw power from the same source as the Devourers themselves. We are, in essence, fighting fire with fire." The debate that followed lasted for hours. Some delegates argued for immediate evacuation of the outer territories. Others demanded that humanity share their advanced weapons technology with the Federation fleet. A few even suggested surrendering to the Devourers in hopes of negotiating mercy. It was Ambassador Vasquez who finally brought clarity to the chaos. "Captain Chen, what do you need from us?" "Time," the ancient warrior replied. "Time to upgrade your fleets with our technology. Time to train your crews in tactics the Devourers haven't seen before. And time to prepare defenses that might actually stand against their assault." Chancellor Mordith's form shimmered as he leaned forward. "And in return?" "In return, I offer you the same thing humanity offered 3 centuries ago. Our complete commitment to this galaxy's survival. The Nightfall and her crew have spent 300 years fighting this enemy. We know their weaknesses, their tactics, their limitations, but we cannot face them alone. The vote, when it came, was unanimous. For the first time in galactic history, the Federation placed its complete trust in a single species, giving humanity carte blanche to prepare the galaxy's defenses as they saw fit. Over the following weeks, the Nightfall emerged from the terminus sector like a dark herald, leading an ever-growing armada of Federation vessels. Captain Chen's crew finally awakened from their long sleep, worked tirelessly to retrofit alien ships with human technology. Weapons that could punch through dimensional barriers were installed on draconian battleships. Crystalline vessels received shielding that existed partially outside normal space. Even the peaceful Zephyrian trade ships were equipped with quantum disruptors that could tear apart Devourer assault craft. As reports came in from deep space monitoring stations, The scope of the approaching threat became clear. The Devourers were coming in force. Not just the mindless drones they had sent before, but evolved forms with strategic intelligence and adaptive capabilities. They had learned from their previous defeat and were preparing to end the war they had started 3 centuries ago. But they were not the only ones who had learned and adapted. As the Nightfall took its position at the head of the largest armada in galactic history, Captain Chen opened communications to address the combined fleet. 300 years ago, humanity stood alone against extinction. Today we stand together, not just as individual species fighting for survival, but as one galaxy united against the darkness between the stars. The Devourers think they know, us think they understand our weaknesses. They are about to learn how wrong they are. The fleet began moving toward the outer rim, where long-range sensors had detected the first Devourer scouts entering normal space. Behind them, across thousands of worlds, billions of beings looked to the stars and waited for news of humanity's most feared ship and the desperate alliance it now led. The second human void war was about to begin, and this time the galaxy would not face it divided.